everyone, welcome. It is a lovely Wednesday evening where we are all still quarantined in our homes as the coronavirus continues to make life miserable for literally everyone. It's time for another Dark Side of the Ring review. I said I was going to be doing these every week, and today we will be covering the New Jack episode that aired last night on Vice TV. But before I talk about that, a few things I want to get out of the way. First of all, my sincerest apologies for my live stream last Saturday getting cut short. I am really, really sorry that that happened. And it's a shame because I was enjoying the stream just fine, but then it got shut down by YouTube, citing that my stream was false advertising and scamming people out of money, potentially spam, and things that are just not true. And I went through the whole appeal system where I submitted a complaint, and I'm like, they don't have anybody looking at these things, so chances are the stream's not going to go back up. And I want to talk to somebody and be like, look, I've done these streams before. My subscribers know what I do on these live streams, and I make it clear it is a live viewing of whatever the topic at hand is. I literally did 36 or 37 of these things when I did this Saturday night's main event and Clash of Champions streams, so... I literally, just a few weeks ago, I did a fucking pay-per-view of AEW. So, it's a bunch of bull that the live stream got cut short, but it makes me kind of skittish about doing another one, at least another live viewing. So if I do another live stream in the near future, it's probably just going to be a straight-up question and answer. It's not going to be a live viewing of anything, because I don't want to piss off the YouTube people. Because God forbid. Heaven forbid such things. But anyway, I deeply, deeply, deeply sorry about that. That pissed me off, to be perfectly honest, to be perfectly blunt. And YouTube, you let me down, you sons of bitches. And I know I'm not exactly a huge YouTuber or anything. I'm not wildly successful on this platform, but it was like I was having fun, and you stopped me from having my fun. What the fuck? And we got through most of the stream. We were on the last match of Invasion 92, and we still had World Tour 92 to get through, so an entire tape. So the stream probably would have gone another, maybe a little over 2 hours, depending on how long World Tour is. But I wanted to end on that one because the main event of that tape is Randy Savage versus Shawn Michaels from 1992. And I was like, oh, shit. That's a perfect one to end on. A rare match that, not many people have seen. That'd be great. But couldn't happen, so I am very, very sorry about that, and I'll have to rethink how I do live streams in the future, so I don't get knocked by YouTube again. Maybe I'll even start just streaming on Twitch. Why not? That might be the more viable options at this point. But anyway, also WrestleMania is this weekend. As I said before, I will not be doing a preview of it or a predictions video because I don't see the point. WrestleMania has already been taped. I don't know if the results have leaked. I haven't gone looking for them, but I'm gonna watch the show. But it's the same thing. It's like I just got done watching Dynamite. It's like, I mean, they're trying, but when you don't have a crowd, you can only do so much to make up for that. Because that's part of the magic of pro wrestling, is that it's an art form that requires an audience, an immediate reaction, and that really comes through when you go back and watch old shit. Like I've been watching the old Nitros. And it's really interesting to see what the crowds react to and what they're not reacting to and everything else. And based on where I am at, I'm in February 97 right now. It's like, man, Lex Luger's torture rack is one of the most over finishers in wrestling at this point. It's insane. It's crazy. But it's good shit. So, when you don't have the audience participation, you don't have that same sense of if something's working. Because honestly, a lot of it just feels awkward without an audience there, especially if the wrestlers are playing to an audience that's not there. That makes it even weirder. But, I've read some reviews of these empty arena shows, and they're still giving the matches star ratings. And I'm like, dude, the matches don't work without a crowd. I'm sorry. Again, that's not the fault of the wrestlers. It's not the fault of anybody involved in this. It's just the hand we've been... Well, if I'm going to blame anybody, it would be the Chinese government. But that's a whole other discussion for another day. This is just the hand we've been dealt, and we just got to weather the storm until we can get past this and actually get real wrestling back. But for right now, it's just how it is. So like I said, I'm not going to do a top 10 matches for March of 2020, and I'm not going to do another one until... I probably won't be doing one in May either for April, because it's going to be more the same for a while, it seems. So I just don't see the point in like ranking or reviewing said matches when one of the key components of making matches work is not there. And again, that's credit to WWE and AEW for trying, but something is severely missing, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the hand we've been dealt. So, right now, the best wrestling show on TV is the documentary series on Vice TV, Dark Side of the Ring. I did a review of last week's two-parter for the Benoit tragedy, which was really well done and extremely tough to watch. Emotionally draining is the best way to describe that episode. And when I heard that New Jack was going to be the subject of this week's episode, actually, when I heard that New Jack was going to be a subject for season 2, I was like, oh shit, this one's gonna be insane. Like, this one's gonna be crazy. Not like emotionally draining in the same way the Benoit tragedy was, but this one's gonna be tough to watch in a whole other way because New Jack is part of some of the most disturbing matches and moments in pro wrestling that I personally have ever seen. And I know the stories. I've seen the footage. I've seen the matches. So to have like New Jack's peers and New Jack himself part of like a mini documentary covering all of this. I thought it would be very interesting, even if very graphic and very hard to watch for a lot of people. I even I told my sister to check it out. She had watched the Benoit one and she's like, "Wow, that was really good." And I'm like, "Yeah, it was." Check out the New Jack episode. I dare you to sit through the whole thing. And she was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Oh, you'll know." You'll fucking know. I guarantee you, she hasn't watched it yet, but I guarantee you she will turn it off the minute the mass transit thing comes up because she does not know about the mass transit incident. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what her reaction is. But I guess I'll start with my opinions of New Jack as a performer and as a wrestler and as a talent in this business. And I don't care for New Jack very much. He's a guy that, to me, goes against what professional wrestling is supposed to be all about, where professional wrestling, I often compare it to dancing, like ballroom dancing or something. You're putting on a show, and you rely on a partner to help you put on that show, and it requires cooperation to create whatever art you're trying to create. And if one of the partners isn't cooperating, then things go south in a hurry. And the whole point of professional wrestling to me, and I've heard Bret Hart describe it this way, and I think it's pretty a good description. You're supposed to make it look like you're hurting the guy without actually hurting the guy. You're supposed to make it look like that you're in a real fight without actually getting into a real fight. And that is the art of professional wrestling. You're giving us something that's not real, but you're sucking me in and for those few minutes from bell to bell, you're convincing me that it's real. New Jack, if you piss him off, as this documentary highlighted quite well, you piss him off, and if he's snorting coke that day, he will straight up try attempted murder. Like, certain incidents that happened, like the Vic Grimes, the free fall at the XPW show, which I'd seen that clip. I'd never actually watched that show, but I've seen that clip over and over again in YouTube videos and highlight packages and everything else. I think wasn't it on one of the early Botchamanias, if I'm not mistaken? But anyway, I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, man, that was almost dangerous. It was dangerous, but it was almost like, that was almost a lethal fall. That was crazy. And it's like, yeah, did you know that New Jack tried to kill him? I'm like, what? New Jack actually tried to kill him. That was, stuff like that is crazy. And New Jack has had more of those incidents that any wrestler should be allowed to have. And if I were a promoter, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I'm like, no. I don't need you going out there and stabbing somebody if something doesn't go your way. I don't need you, if the crowd starts chanting shit at you, I don't need you to fly off the handle and pull out a weapon and attack somebody. Like, because it's only a matter of time. You gotta be thinking, like, if he'll do it to, like, his, for lack of a better term, his dance partner, the guy he's supposed to be working with, what's to stop him from doing it to somebody in the audience? If they say something he doesn't like. And that's always been my problem with New Jack, ever since the mass transit incident, which almost prevented ECW from making it onto pay-per-view. That's how severe, like, the legal shitstorm surrounding that pay-per-view, that incident was. That was a big deal, and it's actually, that would have been 96, and I was not watching ECW at that point. I wasn't big into the tape trading thing, and I was just starting to get on the internet, and I'd only heard about ECW. Like, had they appeared on Raw yet? I don't even know if they'd appeared on Raw yet, but I know that I'd heard rumblings about them, and the first thing I ever saw from ECW was like a shitty copy of the mass transit incident. A friend of mine had got me a copy of it. It's like, dude, take a look at this. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, an attempted assault with a deadly weapon in the middle of a match? Is that what we're doing now? And I thought that was like, in my initial impression was, do they just do this all the time? It's like, no, it's a little bit more work than that. This was just a whole other incident that was a shitstorm, unlike anything that any wrestling company had ever had to deal with. And New Jack, of course, was at the center of it. And you look at the mass transit incident, which negatively impacted ECW, like I said, almost cost them their first pay-per-view. You look at incidents like trying to murder Vic Grimes at an XPW show. You look at what he did with Gypsy Joe, and you look at what he did with... I mean, this has happened so many times with the guy that he stabbed multiple times. Straight up attempted murder right in the middle of a ring just because a guy disrespected him in the locker room and hit him. So, I mean, I don't blame Jack for getting upset, but then you go to like the 100th degree and put yourself in the wrong to such a degree that I feel like you should be in jail. Like, that's just how it is. And you throw the drug use on top of that, which is fueling a lot of this. He even said it on the documentary. Before each one of those incidents, he's almost every single one he said, yeah, I was high. I was doing coke, drinking vodka right before the match. And, he even described it as fuel during the documentary. Which I was glad that we got New Jack's perspective on it, because it just confirmed for me that he's a lunatic. But it was, it was very hard to watch. And again, I'd seen all this stuff before, but it was hard to see it all condensed into 1 hour-long show highlighting this man's career. And it was, I thought the documentary did a very good job of basically highlighting one of the greatest lunatics in the history of professional wrestling, and somebody that if I were a promoter, would not hire. If I were a wrestler, I would not want to work with him, because it's just, there's too many X factors and too much danger involved. And WWE never brought him on board. And I want to make this clear. WWE didn't bring him on board. They brought in Sabu. They brought in Tommy Dreamer. They brought in Sandman. They brought in, Rob Van Dam and Rhino, but they fit closer to the WWE mold than a lot of the other, like, ECW not rejects, but ECW icons, the stars of ECW do. Balls Mahoney, they brought him in. They brought in the BWO. They brought in the Dudley Boys. They brought in so many. Actually, I think the Dudley Boys were way better in WWE than they were in ECW. But even though in ECW they did get red hot fucking heat, but there were a ton of ECW guys that WWE brought on board gladly. New Jack, they never even bothered to touch, and I don't blame them one bit, because that's like, there's such a thing as too hardcore, and New Jack is so hardcore you're afraid of like him winding up in jail and you getting hit with a lawsuit, and that's like, nope, we don't need any of that shit. Which is funny, because Eric Bischoff said that one of the reasons they let Mick Foley go was that he thought Mick Foley was a liability for reasons that he was going to hurt himself. And that's how skittish some people are, or at least were back then, about like the whole hardcore thing. And you throw on top of a guy that will willingly hurt other people that piss him off while he's on drugs. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's like, don't hire this guy. He's crazy. Absolute lunatic. But other things that were covered in the documentary, I had never seen any of New Jack's Smoky Mountain stuff. Smoky Mountain was not a promotion I watched too much of. So it was good to see like a good portion of his Smoky Mountain stuff, and his promos were awesome. They were insane and offensive as all hell, but they were amazing. I was like, oh my god. Okay. I would want to see Smoky Mountain New Jack pop up somewhere in the wrestling scene, because I'm the type of guy to, highlight my mindset. I'm the type of guy, I like to hate my villains, and I love a good, like, heel. It's like, the more offensive, the better. Some people say, oh, scale back. I'm like, go for it. Go for it, because I want the villain to be the most evil, crazy, lunatic motherfucker that says all the craziest shit. And you can get the heat, man. I'm all about getting the heat. And that's always been my mindset. I'm looking at these promos, I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. This guy's incredible. And, you know, you take out the whole, like, attempted murder thing away from him, and I'd be happy to have a character like that in my promotion, because those promos are just, they feel real, they feel intense, and they get under people's skins, which is what I want a heel to be. And, again, I'm the type of guy that watched Sergeant Slaughter turn against the USA in 1991, and I was all like, yeah, that's my bad guy. Give me a bad guy. And other people were like, oh, no, that's too offensive. That's in poor taste or whatever. And I'm the one sitting there like, no, it's great. Get heat on Sarge. It's great. So that's always been my mindset. You have to do a lot, and I mean a lot, to get me to go, okay, you went too far. And attempted murder is a line I definitely draw, but a lot of New Jack's promos were so intense and so great. I was like, shit, this is pretty awesome. I kind of want to go back and watch all of his Smoky Mountain stuff now, because the stuff there is incredible. I also appreciated the story about his tag team partner, Mustafa Saeed, smoking pencil shavings, which I was giggling. It was almost like something out of Tiger King, where I heard it and I just had to giggle for like 5 minutes, because it was so stupid. Like, it was just the craziest thing I'd ever heard. Like, he smoked pencil shavings. Something that not even Sandman was willing to do. Holy shit. Holy shit. That's crazy. But, so it was nice to see Mustafa Saeed get some spotlight, because apparently he's a lunatic too. Maybe not as much of one as New Jack, but he is crazy. And I guess I'll talk about the panel that they had for the thing. They had Sandman. They had Jim Cornette, who was the Smoky Mountain promoter and was able to cover that part of his career. They had Tiny the Terrible, who was a little person wrestler, and one of the ones that vouched for mass transit, setting up that whole incident, basically. And he'd worked basic small scale stuff with mass transit in the past, and he vouched for him, which set up that whole scenario. And that's the whole thing about the mass transit incident, where you have that, like, I don't want to say gray area, but you have that element of the story that puts mass transit, that kid, in the wrong. He lied about his age, he lied about his experience, and set himself up for that. I mean, I remember telling someone about the mass transit incident. Yeah, and then he told New Jack to get color on him, which, famous last words, hey, New Jack, could you cut me? Which, if that didn't show, like, the ultimate ignorance, I don't know what does. Like, asking New Jack to get color on you, I was like, oh, kid. Oh, no. But even with all that, I would say, like, dude, that's still assault with a deadly weapon. I don't care if the kid lied or not, and that's, he shouldn't have been allowed to go out there, and what he did was extremely stupid, and Tiny the Terrible vouching for him was extremely stupid, and Paul Heyman putting him out there without vouching for him was extremely stupid. Getting properly vouched for was extremely stupid. I mean, there was a lot of fault to go around that, but at the end of the day, it's still assault with a deadly weapon. It's just unfortunate that he got put in the ring with New Jack, of all people. It probably would have gone okay if he was in there with anybody else. I mean, it probably would have been a shitbag match, but you wouldn't have had the shit storm surrounding it that you ultimately got. But and that's there's a lot of things which I understand him being mad at Vic Grimes for fucking up that spot that gave him brain damage, cracked his skull, and lost vision in his eye. I totally understand that. I'd be pissed too. Don't say you're gonna do something and then chicken out the last second, and then fuck up the spot and cause me to almost die. Don't fucking do that, you stupid motherfucker. I fully understand being mad at that, but then you take it to a whole other level. All right, I'm gonna try and murder him in a scaffold match, which that is one of the scariest spots I have ever seen in pro wrestling, and it's like, oh shit, that is scary. Because the way his body, bounced off the top ring rope was also another thing. It's like, I don't know how he only got out of that with minor injuries and a broken ankle. I don't know how, you didn't get severely injured or killed in that whole thing. And again, Jack freely admitted he was trying to throw him to the floor. I've also heard that Jack said he was trying to throw him to the ring post or whatever, but it's, this documentary is insane. This episode was insane. And New Jack's career, as it turns out, is absolutely insane. And then when you look at one thing I was really glad that we got out of this episode was a look into Jack's childhood. It's like, all right, what is fueling this craziness and this anger and this attitude from New Jack? And it's like, oh, you listen to how he grew up with his parents. I'm like, oh shit, that's awful. Like that's probably the craziest story in the whole thing when he describes what his father did to his mother, and it's like, what the fuck? Who does shit like this? It's insane. And I talked about it with the Benoit tragedy. It's like, all right, what caused Benoit to snap and do what he did? And it's like, well, I don't think it's any one thing. You can't point to any one thing. It's you've got all the things that I talked about: steroids, drugs, stress, injuries, concussions, depression over losing Eddie. It was just a bunch of things that just exploded one day. I think you have a similar situation here. It's like, what made New Jack the way he is? And it's like his upbringing, his parents, drug use, and maybe the violent atmosphere of ECW and the hardcore wrestling atmosphere that he got into kind of pushed him to embrace the personality of his gimmick a little too strongly. And maybe that's also part of it. I don't know. But I don't think there's any one answer to explain why New Jack is the way he is. I think it's just it's a bunch of different factors that contributed to him evolving into this character that, as they explained in the documentary, some people was like, I don't think I've ever met the real person. It's just always New Jack. And that's that's just how it is. One knock I do have on the documentary, like I said, I alluded to some of the people that they had on there as part of the panel. I would have liked Mustafa to be on the panel just to get that perspective from the tag team partner side of thing, to see how close was he to New Jack in terms of personality. Were they very similar? I know that Mustafa was on the post show following the episode, but you can only get so much out of what was it? Pretty much just a Skype call or a Zoom chat or something like that. And so I would have liked to have seen him on the actual documentary just to kind of get the whole perspective of his tag team partners as part of that. They also had D'Lo Brown on there, which was nice. I never knew D'Lo Brown was part of the Gangstas. That's pretty interesting. D'Lo Brown, who I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before. D'Lo Brown, somebody I was a huge fan of back in 98, 99. He was one of my favorite mid-carders from Attitude Era WWE. And I was always a big fan of his, and I even liked his work with AJ in TNA. What was that, circa 03, I think, 03, 04. And I marked out for D'Lo. It's like, I always liked D'Lo. It's like, oh, I'm always happy to see D'Lo. And to get that perspective of it, it's like, all right, I actually worked with the guy, and it was like, yeah, he's insane. And it's like, his reaction to the stabbing video is... he speaks for all of us. Most sane people, anyway, is the best way to describe that. I mean, as a highlight of one of the scariest individuals in pro wrestling, and I'll say that, and I've talked about people in pro wrestling that legit scare me. I wouldn't want to get on their bad side. I wouldn't want to fuck with them, like a Brock Lesnar or a Minoru Suzuki or guys like that. They are scary in the sense of how they project themselves on TV and as a character and the way they look and their facial expressions and everything. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't want to fuck with that guy. However, if I were a worker or if I were a promoter, I would hire them. If I were a worker, I would totally work with them. I wouldn't have a problem working with them. I'd just make sure I just don't get on their bad side. New Jack, I legitimately, that dude is going to stab me or somebody else, and I'd rather not be within 20 feet of him. And that is the reputation that he's carved for himself. Pardon the pun by saying carved of all choice of words, but I think as far as highlighting one of the most controversial figures in pro wrestling history, I think the documentary did a very good job. And I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you know nothing about New Jack and you've only heard stories, or maybe you've only heard the name, and maybe you didn't grow up with ECW, and it's like, oh, you're in for a treat. Because this guy is a fascinating little facet of professional wrestling history, although not one that I would ever want to associate myself with, if that makes any sense. So, I thought, second week I thought was very good. Another very good one. I thought the subject they picked was very interesting and perfect for a show like this. So, It gave me exactly what I expected to see out of it, so there you go. Next week's episode is going to be the Brawl for All, which is going to be very interesting because at first glance, I'm kind of like, is that really a good subject for something like this? I feel like that would be a better subject for like Bruce Pritchard's podcast or something like that. Just talking about the Brawl for All and what a disaster it was. Because that's straight up like Dark Side of the Ring is typically about the behind the scenes look at pro wrestling, not necessarily the creative side where things are developed and put on TV. And I would be very curious to see what angle they take. What I do know is that Vince Russo's going to be on it, and Jim Cornette's going to be on it. I'm like, oh, great. We get to see them shit on each other again. This is going to be fun. So I'm half expecting Brawl for All to be kind of the comedic episode of the season. So after getting bombarded with visual depression and nightmare fuel, it'll be nice to have, I guess, a lighter episode. I mean, I know guys got hurt doing this thing, and I'm sure they'll push that angle of it, but just the idea of a bunch of pro wrestlers who are trained to work fight all of a sudden be put into a situation where they have to shoot fight is kind of funny. It's because it's just so stupid. I can't believe they thought that was going to work. I remember, well, I'll talk about it next week when I do cover that episode, but I'm very interested to seeing how they cover the Brawl for All, because I think it's going to be a very interesting one. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Once again, I apologize for all the things that I'm kind of cutting out, like the top 10s and my live streams and a WrestleMania preview, but it's like, I just don't think that material would be very interesting, given the circumstance. Well, WrestleMania would not be interesting given the circumstances. A top 10 match list doesn't work if there's all these matches that are being performed without a crowd. And the live streams, YouTube pretty much halted that, so I'm going to have to figure something out with those. So, but again, I'm sorry about all that. This is just the hand we've been dealt, like so many other things in life these days. So that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon down below so you get notified when I post new videos. And follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description. And peace out. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you all later.